do another power up. I finished wiring back in the last adapter cap, replaced a few out of spec resistors around it, cleaned the contacts on the relay, replaced the damper tube, and I've reinstalled the little 8-inch test CRT. Now, what's the big deal about using this? I don't know if I explained this well enough or not. This has a different deflection angle than the CRT it's intended for. So when it comes to me checking to see if the screen is being filled up or not, really not a valid comparison. So it's not ideal for this, but it's a lot bigger and better than trying to use that giant 15-inch CRT is rolling around. Because this is self-focusing and you don't need the focus coil, does not use an ion trap. It's not aluminized. That's why I said there's an ion burn in the middle. And they even say in the data sheets, don't use these for extended use. It's a straight gun right through. They're trying to make it as simple as possible to use to eliminate errors. But it's not, yeah, they wear out. And that's kind of annoying. I have this horizontal hold at one extreme. Now, that was a circuit where they spec'd out that the parts should track within 1% of each other. I tested them with my multimeter, the resistors anyways, and they're close, but they are not, I don't think, within 1%, so I'm going to have a little work to do on that. I don't know if this has a horizontal frequency adjustment coil like most sets do. You might, because it uses a blocking oscillator and then that AFC circuit. I don't think it has a coil I can adjust. But this is kind of annoying. I can't get it to lock. There we go. There we go. It looks good. What we really want to know is about the linearity. So let's get back to it. Crosshatch test pattern. Oh yeah, that's definitely looking better. We don't have that horrible stretch on the left side, and compression isn't as bad on the right side. So that's looking good. Now, we know we're in expanded mode. Let's do shrink mode, because what I have had trouble in the past is when I go between modes, it has a kind of a conniption fit. It's very unstable. Yeah, so the vertical jitters seem to be gone. So here is an engaging. So it's normal. This is expanded. Cool, it's not collapsing like it was. You notice the brightness changes. Yeah, that's intentional. Part of the relay changes divider network on the brightness. I think the idea is when you're expanded mode, it's painting over a larger area, so you want to boost the brightness a little bit, so it makes sense it gets dimmer when it shrinks. However, my two sizes are not all that different from each other. I gotta adjust the height and width for expanded versus non-expanded mode with the proper CRT. I can't do it on this. But anyways, because it's rectangular, because it's the right different deflection angle, that's why we have this curve over here and things don't, the geometry isn't quite right. That's what the yoke, that's the best I can do. It's pushed up as far as it'll go, and it's pretty level. So damper, left side, horizontal up at 2, broad side, right side. So it's still a little squished at the very end there, stretched a little bit here. There is a linearity and width coil. I can muck with those, because those are for adjusting when you get to this point where you're within about 10% of the final. If it's really bad like it was before, those two little adjustments are not going to correct for it. That's when you got major problems. When you get to this point, you can start messing with those. Likewise, the vertical linearity, it's squished a little bit at the bottom, stretched a little bit at the top, so here's expanded vertical linearity. You want to do something like that. And inevitably, when you change linearity, it squishes the height, so I got my linearity better now, but now we lost height, so we got to adjust that. And when I adjust the height, it's going to change the linearity, so you got to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then bump the height up a bit. And now it's squished at the top and stretched at the bottom. So you go back to the linearity control and you stretch the top. And that's a bit too much height, but also, yeah, this is another thing that can drive you nuts. It's not a linear problem anymore. So it's stretched, squished, squished, stretched, It's not a uniform thing. Sometimes you just got to accept that's as good as it's going to get, or you got to start looking at other components. So now it's kind of stretched, squished, stretched, and then squished again at the bottom. So what would I go after next? Either vertical oscillator tube or vertical output tube. But I'm not going to mess with that too much until I get a bigger proper deflection angle CRT. And the other adjustment is on the back of the set. Maybe do it with my finger. It's a little tough to turn, but yeah, there we go. This is what they call horizontal peaking. So if I go to one extreme, now it's stretched on the left side. A little bit squished on the right. What's weird is if you go to either extreme, it stretches things up, but in the middle, it's kind of like that. So no matter where I set this, it's not doing much on the far right, is it? Seems to have more of an impact on how things are in the middle. But it's a heck of a lot better than it was before, that's for sure. So next up, I've changed all the parts on the horizontal output tube, but I changed the horizontal output tube itself, or it's the circuit driving it, which would be the horizontal oscillator, so I can look at that a little bit too. But I'm kind of at the point now where all paper gaps are gone, all the out-of-spec resistors are gone, so you're left with tubes or whatever adjustments they give you, or you just live with it. Also, we're not going to be watching a test pattern, we're going to be watching live video. And that's what really matters, is does this look good enough? And to my eye, sure. And that wraps up all the major work on the main chassis. A few other things I want to take care of or are worth noting. I am going to try to replace the wiring going to the yoke because the insulation is cracked and crumbly. Focus coil, not so bad because it's more flexible type of insulation. I think we're okay with that. Same with the wires going to the CRT socket. Power resistors. Just going by the amount of heat they put out, it makes me wonder, did they use what they had on hand, or I don't know. But I can tell you that this guy barely gets warm. This one running horizontally a little bit more. This guy gets pretty darn toasty. I used a 25 watter. I did pick up a 50, but unfortunately it's about twice as long, so it sticks out too far. Oh, possibly, not possibly, I could get a chassis mount one and drill a couple holes and mount it along in here, which I may well do. But my initial concern was, because this area looks so bad, is that all three of these were roasting away. But no, really it's just that guy. I think some other stuff went on to cause all that discoloration. Well, we know one cap catastrophically vented and another one leaked pretty well. That may have accounted for all the crud underneath here. The big issue, though, is the picture tube. I've been looking at your comments, and I've been thinking about it for weeks, is what do I want to do? Well, that's part of the plan, is when I get to the early television museum, one of the presentations is going to be me putting this thing back together and setting up the picture tube and all that. I can only do so much here because the picture tube gets mounted to the cabinet at the end of these long cables, so I can't make final adjustments until it's all back together. But what picture tube are we going to use? I'd love to keep the 15 AP4 in there, keep the original goofy high voltage connector, even if we need to use a brightener, and as one of you mentioned, hey, it's not going to be watched 10 hours a day. True, but it is nice to have a TV working at the museum, and with the lights on, it needs to be pretty healthy to be viewable. So we'll see. We'll see when we get there. But my other plan was to use a 16 LP4. 1 inch bigger in diameter, same deflection angle though. The only question is there enough play in the mounting such that it fits snugly into that round bezel? Remember, there's a porthole set, and it has this cool cast plastic bezel that the picture tube nestles right into. It's the most eye-catching feature of this set. So I'd like to make that work well. I do have a 16 LP4, but it's in storage. They had some at the museum, but the inventory number has been dwindling. The last I looked, I think there was only one left. I asked them if they could put one aside for me. That would be great. But a worst case scenario, I'll bring my own. I can't tell if it'll fit or not because it's winter. It's snowing. It's going to be in the negative degrees over the next week. I'm really hoping we get a good long break in the weather before I go, because I have cabinet work I want to get to. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next installment. I was able to remove the doors at least and start working on them inside. And here they are. When we've had occasional breaks of weather into the 50s, I've been able to spray on some lacquer and touch them up. Still have a bit more work to do. We'll pick up on that in the next installment. Thanks for watching.